It's 2020 and we're celebrating a new year, thinking of those resolutions for the year to come. However, on the other side of the world, the news isn't so great. There's a new outbreak of an unknown virus in China. In the city of Wuhan, those who are becoming ill seem to have a link to a local fish market. People are becoming seriously ill, and cases continue to rise and spread. The World Health Organization then announces that this is a new coronavirus. The news that no one wanted to hear, that the outbreak is a global pandemic. Testing ramps up around the world. Governments provide guidance to the best they can. Travel plans are halted. Despite these measures, more and more people become ill. We see our first case in the bubble of St. Andrews. Then,
we will beat the coronavirus, and we will beat it together. And therefore, I urge you, at this moment of national emergency, to stay at home, protect our NHS, and save lives. Thank you.
For everyone, you must stay at home unless it is absolutely essential to go out, and that includes working from home wherever possible. Life should not feel normal for you right now, so if it is, then you are not doing the right things, and I want to ask you today to please put that right.
Yeah, that was an interesting question that you actually sort of posed there. And I guess I thought about this and I thought, well, as most of my colleagues will know, I'm always a born optimist. And so I'm really going to sort of focus more on the sort of positive aspects, because a lot of the negative ones are pretty obvious to some extent, not being able to meet your colleagues, not even being able to meet your students. That's something we all miss. We're social creatures as a whole. I guess, as the head of school, I always sort of introduce that, biology is probably the biggest school in that we have about 400 staff. And as a result of that, it's my signature that's on all the documents, all the risk assessments and everything. And that can be a little bit daunting at one stage. But one of the things I've found is that, my colleagues have really come to the fore. I've come across a number of colleagues who have shown skills that they really I didn't know they had beforehand, which is fantastic to see. And this is at all levels, from some of the technicians through to sort of my senior colleagues on management group. A couple of times I've had to ask for volunteers to actually take on work, and, sort of like a call to arms, and people do. They do come and actually step up. And even though I know they're taking on extra work, they're doing it to help me, but also the school as well. Other positives, I've seen colleagues still publishing fantastic research. I know we've got another Nature paper coming out next week in biology. I've seen other people sort of getting fantastic grants as well. I've seen people sort of like, one of the terms people use in this concept at the moment is like pivoting. I've seen people sort of change their sort of research strategy and sort of now getting sort of major significant funding from areas that they probably wouldn't have thought of going for about 6 months ago. Other aspects I've seen which have been really successful have been the practicals that we're running for the undergraduates. In biology, in one sense, our in-person teaching, we're always going to be sort of easier to organize in one sense, because our in-person teaching is the practicals. In particular, I need to sort of praise our teaching technical staff. They've done a fantastic job, and they really have allowed us to actually put on some really high quality practicals, which the feedback we're getting is fantastic from the students in that they appreciate what we've done. It's also something to remember, our teaching technical staff are the ones who are actually in person the most. Out of all of our colleagues, they're the ones who see students every day. I've already talked about sort of like the negative side of things, about the sort of social aspects, not being able to meet people. Currently, right at the moment, one of my PhD students is actually doing their PhD Viva. And as a result of that, there's not going to be a problem, but we're not going to be able to celebrate that at the end. So that gives you a bit of a snapshot of some of the positives and some of the negatives.
Outside of work, what were the most difficult parts of lockdown for you?
I guess, I mean, the sort of really personal things, which is about me, I can deal with. That doesn't worry me. But the hardest thing has been, when you're trying to deal with sort of like family members and sort of like, who are all around the world or even sort of closer. I mean, I've made this known. One of the difficulties I had at the very beginning was actually when the NHS closed the pain clinics in Scotland. And this caused a particular problem. So my wife, and she doesn't mind me telling people this, she has a chronically bad back and she has to have a very specialized treatment every sort of 10 weeks to actually try and manage the pain. And as a result of that, that didn't occur. That wasn't going to occur. And so then I was like trying to root around of how to actually solve this problem. In the end, what I did was I talked to some friends of mine who were in New York, who put me in contact with a colleague of theirs in one of the hospitals in New York, who's a pain specialist. And I mean, the kindness of other people never ceased to amaze me. So this guy was looking after 2,000 COVID patients in New York at the time, personally. But he was a pain specialist, but he came off his clinics to talk to Danielle and do a consult. The result of all that is that he said, yes, I will actually give you the drugs that you need for this treatment. Then what we did was that we had to have those drugs shipped over from New York. And the biggest problem there was I had an almighty tussle with customs to get them through, but I won. And in the end, I actually had to do the procedure myself. I never thought I would actually have to do that, but you do it because you have to. Other things, I think I put this in one of my weekly messages. My family, we had a death in the family. Actually, one of my cousins, my age, they died because of a long issue on cancer. And of course, the hard thing there is none of us could get to the funeral. But we're just one of many people who've had to deal with that. The last one I'll sort of tell you about, and I put it in one of my weekly messages. It was very sad. We had to put one of our beloved cats to sleep. Now, my wife is a vet, so we could do it, but it's the fact that we had to do it ourselves. So those are sort of three examples of tough things certainly in the first lockdown, where you actually basically just have to, roll your sleeves up and just say, this is what we've got to do.
What were the positive perspectives or outcomes to come from your lockdown experience?
Well, I guess the first thing I would say is you learn a lot about yourself, don't you? I would say in a positive way as well. Things that you thought you couldn't do, you find out you can do. Specific things, I think from a work-related aspect would be teaching. I think teaching will evolve. I don't think it will be completely as dramatically different as we've done before, but there have been some things that I've seen in teaching which have been positive. I've seen some students actually sort of come to the fore, probably some of the shy students who were sort of like quite nervous, maybe speaking out in class. Now, because we do things online, are actually sometimes have a bit more sort of confidence to do something. However, that won't replace the fact that we still do need to actually sort of be face-to-face with students to actually sort of answer some of their problems. In that sense, the way we're teaching at the moment will actually help some of the disadvantaged students as well. Those who actually may have certain disabilities. We have the ability to actually sort of give them more information than we could have done before. I think other things positive, learning to be patient, very important, not just work. Especially at the beginning in the first lockdown, when you're standing in the pouring rain, waiting in that queue, getting thoroughly frustrated because the person in front of you thinks 2 meters is actually 10 meters. And the person in front of you also doesn't seem to know how to wear a mask, can be extremely frustrating. So you've got to, you do learn sort of patience. Research conferences, I do miss, obviously, like everybody else, those interactions, but the fact that you can dip in and out of them can be quite useful. You can sort of say, well, actually, I'm going to give this sort of lecture a bit of a skip, if you see what I mean. And the last positive thing, again, I've sort of mentioned this in my sort of messages, well, I've lost 2 stone in weight, which wasn't a bad thing, and I no longer have a bad back because I don't do any driving anymore.
What aspects from lockdown would you like to continue going forward?
So yeah, I thought about this one. Not a huge amount to say on this. I guess I've already sort of covered some of the teaching aspects. There will be lessons we can learn from the teaching aspect. But the number one thing, I think, is to make sure that we always are in contact with each other not just with the students, but with their colleagues as well, to make sure, always, are they okay? I mean, we've had a few times where we've had some people who are having a very difficult time. And so what we've had to do is sort of put sort of like networks of people just to look out for people, just to make sure they're sort of okay. And we shouldn't forget that when we all just assume everybody's okay. Always, make sure that we keep going, sort of say, are you okay? Is there a problem? Can we help? I think that's what I would like to see going forward the most.
If you're able to go back to the start of lockdown, what advice would you give yourself?
Yeah, again, quite a short answer. I thought about this and I thought, actually, be patient, breathe, take time, and actually, number one, just trust in your colleagues. I think what you're doing at the moment is a great idea. Getting people to be sort of like talk about their experiences. Hopefully it sort of shows people that you're never alone. Lots of people have problems, and if we do sort of like try and sort of get those stories out there, what it does is go, okay, this person's had to deal with this as well. How did they go about it? And even sort of like reach out and say, I need some help. Don't be afraid to ask.